Well, here I am this evening to give my testimony for our blog. Um, Ultimately, I guess pretty much my story is growing up. I was raised with a Christian background. My parents were always going to church, really into the Christianity. I mean, my parents raised us right. But ultimately, whenever I grew up and got out of the house, as any child's more than likely going to do, is pretty much take his own path. So I did that. And my parents used to always drag us to church. They always used to take us to a bunch of the church events. And as a young man, I didn't want to go anymore. So once I left the house, I no longer took it, I never wanted to do that anymore. So I just sort of took my own path, which of course wasn't the right path. So as time went on, eventually I met whom is my wife now. And she invited me to church. So I knew about church and everything, and I started going to church. Probably for the wrong reasons, but ultimately for the right reason. But we ended up going to church, and after a while, we ended up getting married, and we had a child together. And I always knew, because my father would always say, hey, you have to get baptized, give your life to Christ. So I always knew that was there, but ultimately, I didn't feel the calling, that I felt I should have had. So pretty much getting married, had my wife, my kids, and one of my kids at this time. Going through life, I just started realizing there was struggles, there was things going through, through our life, just like anything else. And I'd always say, I'm going to give my life to Christ whenever I'm ready. Whenever I'm ready. And so I kept waiting, and finally, one of my wife's, her family had a church that they were at in Andrews, and they had invited us to a Valentine's service there. So we went to it and everything, and ultimately that's where Christ came into my heart. I was there in prayer, and let me just tell you, when Christ comes into your heart, you're going to know it. It's going to be an impact. Well, speaking personally, I guess if other people have their own chain of events, but personally speaking, God came into my heart, and it was a love like no other. I mean, I'd love my wife to the point I married her, and I love my children, but this love that was given to me was just, I don't know, it's hard to describe, it's electrifying. I mean, it's just overwhelming. But you will understand that when you do go through this process, for those that have, know exactly what I'm talking about. For those that haven't, this is a process that's going to completely change your life. Completely turn it around to the point that people are going to see you as a whole new person. So once I gave my life to Christ, of course, my deal was sometimes I was embarrassed to do the baptism part, because I didn't want to be, I didn't want to do this act in front of everybody. But ultimately, the love that God gives in you and the change that He puts in you, it felt like an honor to be able to do that, to be able to publicly profess to everybody that I was a sinner, and you know what, God changed me. So whenever you do this, give your life to Christ, it's something that completely changes you. Completely changes your life, the people around you, and the way you live. Ultimately, you're going to have friends that you might even lose at some point. But you know what? You just put it in God's hands, because eventually they'll do a full turnaround and come right back to you because of what you have, because of what God's given you. So, God gives me a love now. That was in the past. Now, as a converted Christian, God blesses me so much. I have my lovely wife, my children. I have been blessed to the extreme. But, are we going to fail? Yes, we're going to fail sometimes. Are we going to trip and stumble? Sure we are. You know what? We're not perfect, and we're not going to be perfect. So ultimately, don't let that keep you from giving your life to Christ. Because, we all trip and stumble. But you know what? God's always there with open arms. And sometimes I see it, thinking of the prodigal son. Whenever I do stumble and I come back to him, I mean, he receives me with open arms. And that embrace that he gives you when you come back is an embrace that will more than likely keep you from doing it again. So ultimately, you know, you're going to fail, but you're going to overcome it. So that is my testimony for today, and hopefully it was an impact to be able to help you, whether you're on the borderlines or on the verge of doing that. Don't be ashamed of what Christ has for you, because the payoff is going to be completely excellent and a blessing that you will never forget. Thank you.